Hello. So I wanted to do a little kind of like a media analysis of an older movie. One of my favorite movies, actually. And this is a movie that people I feel like it's a tough one to talk about, because the thing about Fight Club is that there are a lot of I think competing narratives about what the conceit of the movie is. And I think far too many people view specifically Tyler Durden within the context of the story as the good guy, or not, if not the good guy, then the anti-hero. Tyler Durden isn't an anti-hero. Tyler Durden is a straight up villain. The thing about visual storytelling in terms of movie, a film, is that there's two stories being told at the same time. You have the visual story, and you have the text. The text, which being the script, basically the story, the plot, the dialogue, whatnot. Essentially, my takeaway from Fight Club, even the first time I saw it, was that the narrator, who is unnamed, but most people call him Jack because of the recurring line that he says throughout the text. I am Jack's blank, basically. Jack is a guy who is lost in the world, and I hate to bring up words like toxic masculinity, for example, because people they're very adverse to this language, because especially men who go like, well, I don't think they really understand, or maybe they do, but they're just trolling or something. But like, there's nothing bad about masculinity. Not true. There's some bad things about masculinity. There's some bad things about femininity. The traits that you would commonly associate with the feminine, like nourishment and protection and motherly love. There's a bad side to that. Like, you can overnourish someone. You can overprotect someone. It's not just a straight good thing. The same goes for masculinity, Being strong is great. Being violent is not. I mean, unless, of course, it's warranted, unless you're defending yourself. Being persistent is great. Being aggressive is not. I mean, unless you're being met with aggression and you're asserting yourself. So, and those are traits that are associated with masculinity. Now, there's great masculinity, there are great aspects of that, and there are bad aspects of that. And the bad aspects are basically what toxic masculinity is referring to. Is there toxic femininity? Sure. I guess if you want to say like gold digger mentality, if you want to associate that with toxic femininity, then fine. I guess you could, yeah, sure. If that makes you feel better about if it makes you feel better about the dichotomous nature of the bad things about people, then yeah, you can say that. You could say that overprotecting or overnourishing a child is an example of toxic femininity. But what we're talking about in terms of Fight Club is men. And that's like something that has to, like, some people seem to have a big problem with this. Like, having a conversation about what it is to be a man, or what you're told a man is supposed to be. I was like, I've seen this many interpretations of this movie, and a lot of them are troubling. Some of them are troubling. Like, the idea that the narrator, that Jack needed Tyler. I guess it's debatable as to whether Jack needed Tyler or not, but Tyler didn't do anything good for the narrator. Objectively, this is like explicit text. What Tyler did was take Jack's isolation and dissatisfaction with the world and just amplified it. He couldn't connect with people outside of his boss, his coworkers. The only way he knew how to interact with them was through contempt or blackmail, and that's pretty much it. Like this sense of like just morbidity that like surrounds Jack's character. Tyler didn't help him with that. He made it worse. And the creation of Fight Club itself is really just an attempt by the narrator. Of course, you don't know if spoilers if you've never seen it, but I mean it's a pretty old movie at this point. So, really, what Fight Club is a cult of personality that the narrator creates unknowingly around Tyler Durden. It's not a brotherhood. It's not a, or at least that's not its purpose. I mean, it might seem that way from time to time, but that's not what it is. Like, these guys are punching each other in the face. There are rules like saying like, hey, you can't kill anybody, sure, but this is like, these are guys that just wanted to, that feel like they're being robbed of something. And that's like basically their ability to be a man. And that's what their idea of being a man is being aggressive, being violent, being kind of I wouldn't say predatory, but I mean there are aspects of that later on in the movie. What's going on here is a cult. It's a cult. That's all it is. It's extremely unhealthy behavior. And to think that this is like some kind of, to say that this is some kind of like freeing experience for these guys is either missing the point or being essentially conned by the philosophy of Tyler Durden, which, if you examine under heavy scrutiny, means nothing. It's basically every other cult leader's line of bullshit. And there are also there's like, I've seen defenses of Project Mayhem, like, they don't kill anybody. Well, no, I guess, but I mean, what their intent is in the movie is to basically destroy credit institutions, which would lead to a financial collapse, which would lead to the collapse of the American economy. This, and this isn't like, I mean, yeah, sure, no one's dying right now, but I mean, Tyler says this in the movie. He says, I want to create a society, and I can't remember it verbatim, but he says there's a point after, I believe it's after Jack and Tyler get in the car. They had like they had a fight or something because Tyler's not been around. And which is another thing that we have to discuss, is that the Jack's attachment to Tyler. Tyler is his validation, but we'll get back to that. Tyler tells him that he has to let go, he's in the driver's seat, and then they basically crash the car. And then in the scene immediately afterwards, I believe that this is where this takes place, Tyler basically explains his goals. And he says, essentially, he's like, I want to be able to climb the Sears Tower, which has been, covered in kudzu vines or whatever, and I'm staring out at all these people on like these little ant-like people below, like laying out strips of venison on the abandoned carpool lane on a super highway or something. He wants societal collapse. This isn't even like this isn't even reading subtext. This is reading the explicit text in the movie. He's not a good guy. And if you think that he's a good guy, then you're falling for the trick that the movie is essentially, the film, the story, whatever, is essentially, I don't know if satirizing is the right word. I don't think it is. But it's an indictment of this attitude. And I feel like, I can't say that this is a problem with the movie, because unless you're just unless you're reading it poorly, then you can't miss it. Like, you can't. I don't know. The only thing that I can see that the movie might have been a little bit complicit in is the framing, and I guess it's hard to do this because Tyler is, for if he's nothing else, he is an idealized man, at least in terms of what the narrator thinks. So he's gonna have there's a scene where they get on the bus and they're looking at this advertisement of underwear or something, and it's a guy. There's a guy on the ad, and he's very, very svelte, and he's very lean, and like he has like the 6-pack, but it's like clearly all glory muscles or glamour muscles or whatever you call that. And derisively, the main, like, Jack looks up at the ad and he's like, "Is that what a real man looks like?" And Tyler goes like, but the thing is that Tyler looks like that. That's what Tyler looks like. He's fucking Brad Pitt. He's a svelte, glamour muscle bound pretty boy. Other than his edgy nihilistic philosophy, which is again, it's all bullshit. But I mean, like, it's weird to see Tyler making fun of this idealized version of a man when he basically embodies that, physically speaking, at the very least. I mean, philosophically, maybe not, but even then, the whole problem that the narrator has, that Jack has with society, is this, like, banality, this, I'm being forced to do this thing, and I can't be anything else. Like, I can't exist outside of these strictures. Like, I want to find something more than this, basically. I want to find something more than work. I want to find something more than this, like, tireless quest for the new fucking dust ruffles or whatever. And in doing this, in creating Tyler and finding a new outlet, he has just created I guess, like a mini society, a very small micro society. A cult. All the strict behaviors that are instituted are still there. He hasn't escaped it, which is why, it's all fun and games with the Fight Club stuff because, whatever, we're just getting together in a basement. We are kicking the shit out of each other and making excuses for it, which is, whatever. It's dumb, but I mean, like, at least it's an outlet for these, these guys who feel like they can't be men. They can't be men if they're not punching people in the face. They can't be men if they're not, launching these weird attacks against society under the guidance of this guy who, and again, it's explicit text. Project Mayhem, when it starts, is like it's everything. It's every bad thing that you can think of: a commie cult, a National Socialist cult, a regular cult like Jim Jones cult. Like, he has them digging or doing manual labor, and he's just shouting these platitudes at them, like, "Oh, you're just all the part of the same thing. You're all part of the decaying matter of the universe." Like, if I were, like, looking in as a man and being like, I want to find something else. I want to find something better than this daily routine that I'm locked into, that I have to be. I don't want to feel like I'm pressured to be this thing that basically everyone or the society I live in has told me to be. If I go into this fucking cult and I see them, like, basically going like, in Project Mayhem, we have no names. No! No! Fuck that! That's like, what the fuck? Like, it takes the egoism or the isolation or the sadness of consumer culture, and it destroys all of that, in a sense, but it replaces it with this, like, I am nothing. This is me, and we are men, and like that's it. There's no identity other than that, and you're just like you're just Mr. Tyler Durden's drone now, which is like, even, in my opinion, even worse, because at least in the consumer society, you could at least go like, well, I'm not going to buy that. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to go find something else, that gives me fulfillment. But here, if you try to fucking leave, like, it's a problem. Jack is talking to the police, and he's like, these guys are crazy. He's talking to them about Project Mayhem, and he's like, these guys are crazy. They're gonna blow up all these financial institutions, and they're gonna set the clock back to zero, and a bunch of people are gonna die, probably. I mean, that's the logical conclusion that one can glean from this. And the cops he's talking to are actually members of Project Mayhem, and they're like, oh, well, Tyler Durden, Mr. Durden, they call him Mr. Durden because they know him as Mr. Durden. And they're like, you've told us if anybody tries to leave, I think they say if anybody tries to leave or maybe betray Project Mayhem, we have to get his balls. And they, like, pull out a knife and they're going to cut his dick off. Or his balls off. Which is another heavy theme in this movie, and this story, basically. And I've seen a lot of people say, basically along the lines of, the theme of castration, or the theme of male infertility in the movie is portrayed in a way that is supposed to be like, listen, if you aren't able to make children as a man, you shouldn't be, like, marginalized or shunned or feel like you're less of a man. Basically, that's what I've seen that argument, and then I've seen the counter argument where it's like, hold on, losing your balls is a traumatic event. Don't just say that this is, like, not a big deal. And there's a middle ground there. I mean, it's closer to if you're infertile and a man, you shouldn't have to feel like less of a man because of it. It's closer to that. But I mean, what I'm saying is that, yes, castration, obviously, losing your balls is terrible. It's traumatic. It's violent. I mean, that's the whole point of Project Mayhem's obsession with nuts, is that but their obsession goes beyond the physical trauma of, like, losing your nuts. Or losing your manhood in a way that's, like, outside of your own control. Like, if you get sick and you become infertile, or you have to get your testicles removed, God forbid. Of course that's traumatic, but that shouldn't be the measure of your manhood. That's the point. It shouldn't be, like, you should be able to go from this and move on from it and not have it basically ruin your life. Now, I've seen people say that, like, arguing for this, like, for having this attitude towards the male infertility, I've seen people say that this is basically an argument for forced sterilization, which is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's insane. Like, it's not an argument for forced sterilization. It's an argument that if you happen to be a man who doesn't have the ability to have children, or lost the ability at some point in their life, you should not feel like less of a person or a man because of that. That should not be the determining factor. And I'm sure many people, if anybody watches this and they're going to see me saying this and they're going to be like, oh, well, you don't think, balls are important or whatever. I'm just like, that's not that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, again, you have to find meaning in life for yourself, and not everything is tied into this idea that you have to procreate. Not everything is tied into this idea that, like, what's the real sacredness of passing on your genes? I mean, like, I know it's a great personal it can be a great personal experience, having kids, raising them, loving them, but there's no inherent sacredness to it. It's not a metaphysical imperative. It's a choice. But I mean, like, for some people, it's not a choice. They either have to adopt because, I mean, they can't produce offspring, or they have to go through a surrogate or something like that. And that doesn't mean that, like, you're less of a person because you have to do that. Your worth as a person is not dictated by whether you can produce other people. I mean, unless you're a fucking eugenicist or some kind of fucking naturalistic, fallacious asshole who thinks that the only point to your life is to pump out other people to be faced with this apparently this terrible consumerist society that we have built. So yeah, I mean, like, this wasn't even a media analysis. This was like a rant. But I mean, like, it's like, I feel like I hate these like facile readings of this movie. I mean, a lot of people just look at Tyler Durden and they're instantly taken in by this guy, by the way he looks, by the way he carries himself. Like, Brad Pitt does a great job. He does a great job in the movie. He almost does too good of a job in the movie because he takes the cult leader archetype and plays it so well that there are people in the audience who are watching the movie which is explicitly condemning Tyler Durden as an insane person whose ideas are unsustainable and unhealthy, and they're still convinced that he knows what he's talking about. I mean, like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy that can happen. Yeah, I guess. I mean, like, the only other thing that I could bring up here is like is Marla. I think it's pretty telling that throughout the entire movie, It seems like Jack hates Marla, but he doesn't hate Marla. He likes Marla, but he can't reconcile these feelings. Because, I don't know, and it's not really explicitly stated throughout why, although you can kind of pick up here and there maybe some clues as to why this is. He really likes Marla, and he can't deal with it. And it's not, and I don't know if it's because he's afraid of her, or he's intimidated by her, or this, that, or the other thing. But he builds Tyler in order to get Marla. He pieces Tyler's personality together in order to get Marla. A guy who, he says this, Tyler himself, as Brad Pitt as Tyler says this himself. I fuck like you want to fuck. I look like the way you want to look. I am competent, and I'm hyper competent, and I'm also free in all the ways in which you are not. That's all. That's it. Tyler is this confidence that, Jack manufactures within himself in order to talk and interact with Marla. And the problem is that Tyler is flawed because he's limited. Tyler is not an emotionally deep character. He's intentionally shallow. I mean, he's the kind of shallow where he seems deep in like a very short conversation. He has a lot of phrases he likes to pull out, like, oh, let the chips fall where they may. Oh, you're not your khakis. Oh, you're all these fucking platitudes that ultimately don't mean anything. And that's not how you can't use that personality to get to a deep, meaningful relationship. But you can use that personality in order to get sex. And that's basically what Jack's relationship is with Marla throughout most of the movie, although he doesn't know it, because he sees it as Tyler fucking her. Not him fucking her. It's actually him. But once Tyler is gone, and this is really important, like, this is probably the most important part of the movie. Once Tyler is gone, in effect, Jack kills Tyler, quote unquote. At the end of the movie, when the buildings all collapse and he's holding hands with Marla, this is a human moment. This is probably one of the first human moments he's had with Marla outside of when the part where he realizes that he's Tyler and he tries to send her away to get her out of harm's way. But this is now without the constraints of like Tyler being around and kind of influencing his personality. Jack can just be a person with a woman, which I think, and a lot of people are gonna get pissed off that I say this, and you know what? You don't have to agree with me. I really don't care. A lot of problems that men have in just being functional human beings, a lot of it stems from an inability to interact with women as if they are people. And maybe this is true of women too, but I'm a guy, so I'm not sure. all I can speak of is from my own experience and with the people that I've known and all that shit. Basically, maybe, but it's hard for a guy to look at a woman and not think, ooh, what if we had sex? Like, what if that happened? But I mean, like, it's something that's not like I've found. It's something that hinders personal experience. It's something that thought process hinders the possibilities of good experiences. It hinders the possibilities of great friendships. And I feel like in separating oneself from that mentality, you can find a lot of good outcomes, a lot of good experiences, a lot of good. It makes the world seem less task oriented. It makes the world seem less deterministic. It makes the world seem more open. And I mean, there are possibilities. Like, I feel like it opens up possibilities. If you just like, if as a guy, you learn how to just like turn off that that bio trigger where you just look at a woman and you see parts instead of a human being. Which is not to say that every guy does that. By the way, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's like. I'm not saying it's a truth that, you know, men see women exclusively as objects. But I know that I've known men like that, and I've been like that. So I'm just going by personal experience. But yeah, that's basically my little rant about Fight Club. Is that Tyler's not a good guy. Fight Club is not healthy. Project Mayhem is not a revolution, and Jack is a better human being at the end after everything, after he basically sheds all of the trappings that Fight Club, Tyler, and Project Mayhem had given him in the first place. Alright. Have fun.